and give me the ability to follow it, and show me falsehood as falsehood, and give me the ability to refrain from it. This class is for all the creation of Allah. Let's purify our intentions for the sake of Allah, inshallah. So today is a summary class. This is the first time we're doing it since we started the Quran. Today is a summary class from verse number 261 to 274. This is a cluster of verses, ayahs. It's like a bouquet. It's like a flower. It's a bunch of flowers. It's a bouquet. It's a beautiful bouquet of commandments of Allah about charity. Now, how do you guys want to do about it? I was thinking I will give you just an overhead of the verses, and then inshallah we can talk about it. I would like to know your reaction, and then in the end we'll wrap it up because this topic is so important. This affects both our lives, the physical life and the spiritual life. This this act, this charity, which is the command of Allah, it not only brings prosperity in this life, it brings prosperity in the afterlife as well. So let me give you an overview of the verses. So it's Ruku 36 or section 36. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts with the verse 261. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an intro to charity, and he starts with a parable. The topic of charity is started with a parable. Allah says, the parable of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. It grows 7 years, and each year has 100 grains. Allah gives manifold increases to whom He please, and Allah cares for all and He knows all things. So, this is the introduction to charity in verse number 261. Now, in second verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an attitude that after you give charity, the first parable tells us the growth of charity, right? It tells us about the growth of charity. Second is those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah and follow not, and they don't follow their gifts with reminders of their generosity or with injury for them. Their reward is with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. La khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. So the 261, it gives the parable of charity and how it grows. Verse number 262 gives us how to behave or how to act after we give charity. 263, this verse tells us what is better than charity. What can be better than charity? And in this verse, Allah says, kind words and covering of faults. Kind words and covering of faults are better than charity followed by injury. Allah is free of all wants and He is most forbearing. Moving on to the next verse. Verse 264. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to tell us how charity is cancelled. And then three parables will follow. So the first verse of 264, the first parable in verse number 264, how charity is cancelled. Allah is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you those who believe, cancel not your charity by reminders of your generosity, or by injury like those who spend their wealth to be seen of men. So charity is cancelled by reminders and by Riyah. Riyah is showing off. But believe neither in Allah nor in the last day. So who spend their wealth to be seen by men, they believe neither in Allah nor in the last day, and in they are in parable like a hard, barren rock on which is a little soil. On it falls heavy rain, which leaves it just a bare stone. They will be able to do nothing with what they have earned, and Allah guides not those who reject faith. So, how to cancel your charity? By reminders and by showing off. And then the parable is given. The first parable is of a bare rock on which little rain falls, and it's covered with greenery, and we think that greenery is deep down, but it's just on the top of the stone. It's not on soil, and a little rain falls, and then the greenery goes away and the stone is bare. Moving on to next verse, verse 265. In verse 265, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the reason why you should give charity. What is the reason for giving charity? Number one, to please Allah. Number two, to strengthen soul. And for this, he again gives a parable. So let's go move on to verse number 265. And the likeness of those who spend their wealth seeking to please Allah to strengthen their soul is a garden, high and fertile. Heavy rain falls on it, but makes it yield a double increase of harvest. And if it receives not heavy rain, light moisture is sufficient, and Allah sees well whatever you do. Moving on to verse number 266. In verse number 266, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a third parable. And in this parable, the whole intent of the verse is that this life is temporary, because we tend to spend all our wealth on what? This life, the physical world, the cars and the homes and the education and this and that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us, in case you forget about charity, in case you think giving is not beneficial for you, remember one thing: this life is temporary. Allah says in verse 266, does any of you wish that he should have a garden with date palms and vines and streams flowing underneath and all kinds of fruit, while he is stricken with old age and his children are not strong enough to look after themselves? That it should be caught in a whirlwind with fire therein and be burnt up. Thus, this is how Allah makes clear to you His signs that you may consider. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. It is hope that you will reflect. It is hope that you will consider. It is hope that you will take this verse seriously and apply it. Allah is reminding us in the middle of all these verses of charity, Allah brings this verse. In this verse, and Allah saying, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Please reflect. Please try to understand. Please try to contemplate what Allah is trying to tell us. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moves on to the next verse, verse 267. What kind of charity should be given? What kind of charity should be given? In verse 267, Allah says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu. O you those who believe, give of the good things. Tayyib, tayyib is pure. Give of the good things which you have earned, and of the fruits of the earth which we have produced for you, and do not aim at anything which is bad. Out of it you may give away something when you yourself would not receive it, except with closed eyes, and know that Allah is free of all wants and worthy of all praise. Moving on to verse number 268. In verse 268, uh, you know, up till from 261 to 268, in these seven verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the importance of charity, the attitude after giving charity, what is better than charity, how charity is cancelled, the parable of the ones who give charity, the reason for giving charity. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, this life is temporary. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what kind of charity should be given. Now, after seven verses, Allah is telling us, in case after doing all this, you still don't give charity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings another aspect to our lives, which we tend to ignore. And that aspect is that of the shaitan. Allah says in verse 268, Shaitan threatens you with poverty and bids you to conduct unseemly. Allah promises you His forgiveness and bounties, and Allah cares for all, and He knows all things. وَفَضْلٌ وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Allah is the one who cares for everything, and Allah is the one who knows all things. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is adding another component, that after Verse number one, two, three, four, five, six, seven verses. If you still feel that you should not give charity, then be aware. Your open enemy, Aduun Mubin, Shaitan, is the one who is going to come and he's going to make you fearful of poverty, because the fear of poverty is always in us. And in then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember we last class we talked about the khawfan alayhim walahum yahsanun. Those who hold on to the rope of Allah, they have no fear and they do not grieve. So here verse 268, Allah is saying, if still you don't want to give charity, understand it is Shaitan who will come and he will make you fearful of the poverty. Moving on to verse number 269. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing another aspect, 269 and 270. 270 is actually Allah's guarantee, but 269, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala totally brings an aspect to the conversation. Allah is giving us, we are having a talk with Allah. Allah is talking to us about giving charity, right? So here Allah says in verse 269, Allah says, what is wisdom? He talks about wisdom. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He grants wisdom to whom He pleases, and he to whom wisdom is granted receives indeed a benefit overflowing, but none will receive admonition but men of understanding. So Allah is saying, and here Allah is, Allah talks about a beautiful group of people, and we talked about it, that men of understanding, ulul albab. This is the group of men who has wisdom, who have hikmah. They are the one who rises, different groups of humanity, but this group of humanity called ulul albab, they are the one who have wisdom. And for Arabs, wisdom is when you understand the depth of things and when knowledge is acted upon. So wisdom is not knowledge. Knowledge is when you understand the depth of things, right? That is knowledge. But once you act on that knowledge, then that is wisdom. So if we know these, we are on ayah number 7 and 8 of charity. If we know the 7 verses of charity and still, since last week, we haven't given any charity, or maybe in the next 7 years, we won't give charity. But if anybody asks you, hey, do you know the verses of charity? Yes, yes. It's in Surah Baqarah. It starts from verse number 261 and it ends on to 274. Yes, we know these verses of charity, and you can quote the verses exactly in Arabic and in English. And everyone like, whoa, man, you know all the verses? Yeah, in Arabic and in English. Have you given charity? No. So, knowing the verses is knowledge, acting upon is wisdom. Here, Allah is giving us an action point. In verse 269, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, what is wisdom? What is wisdom? Once you have this knowledge, now act on it. Spending is wisdom, hoarding is not wisdom. Then, verse number 270, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a guarantee. Imagine the guarantee of Allah, the promise of Allah. We all make promises, sometimes with the best of intentions, we can't keep it. Allah is one being, the Rabb, the creator, the cherisher, the nourisher, the one who's sustaining, Al Hayy, Al Qayyum. He is the one who's Al Khaliq, Al Malik, Al Rabb. He is the one. He's giving us a guarantee. What is his guarantee? Verse 270, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whatever you spend in charity or whatever vow you make, be sure Allah knows it all, but the wrongdoers have no helpers. They have no helpers. Another aspect to that. Moving on to verse number 271, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the power of charity. If you haven't still understood, if you haven't still grasped the importance of giving charity, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the power of charity. Verse number 271. If you disclose acts of charity, even so it is well. But if you conceal them and make them reach those really in need, that is best for you. It will remove from you some of your stains of evil. So Allah is again the first part of ayah is an attitude towards charity, that it's better to disclose, it's a safer path. But if you have to disclose, if you have to tell people about it, so that for different reasons, then it is fine. But what is the power of charity? It will remove sins from you. And Allah is well acquainted with what you do. Moving on to verse number 272. Now, the verse 272 is about the beneficiary, the one who is given charity. So, again, this is an attitude on behalf of the ones giving charity, but it is about the beneficiary. So, verse 272 is about the beneficiary. Allah says, it is not for you to guide them to the right path. Sometimes we give charity to believers and non-believers. You can give charity to non-believers under certain circumstances, but the best charity is given to our relatives. We start with our relatives, poor relatives, and then the circle expands. Sometimes we are giving charity like, and then we can put conditions on people like, oh, you need to do this, or even if we don't put conditions, we start talking about the beneficiary. I give him my sadaqah. Look at his behavior towards Allah and towards this and towards that. No, 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 no. We give sadaqah, we give charity, and we back off. We don't go back. Sahaba, when they would help somebody or give charity, if they were going and they had to sit in the shade of a wall, they would never, if they're passing by the house of the person that they would given charity, they would not even sit in the shade of the wall of the beneficiary, because they might think that we are trying to benefit from this person because we benefited them, we give them charity. So the attitude of the person giving charity to the beneficiary is, Allah says, it is not for you to guide them to the right path, but Allah guides to the right path whom He pleases. Whatever good you give benefits your own souls, and you should only do so seeking the face of Allah. Whatever good you give shall be rendered back to you, and you shall not be dealt with unjustly. Moving on to verse 273. Now, here in the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually, because charity has such a broad spectrum, it's a very broad spectrum act. It starts with your near relatives and it goes out in the society, to the orphans, to the poor. But in this group, in this verse 273, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing out a group which is most deserving of your charity, which is most deserving of your charity. And what is that group? Allah says, charity is for those in need, who in Allah's cause are restricted from travel and cannot move about in the land seeking for trade or work. The ignorant man thinks because of their modesty that they are free from want. You should know them by their unfailing mark. They beg not, and what is their mark? They beg not importunately from all and sundry. It's a very difficult English. Let me use this English, the one on the verse. So, charity is for the needy who are too engaged in the cause of Allah to move about in the land for work. Those unfamiliar with their situation will think they are not in need of charity because they do not beg. You can recognize them by their appearance. They do not beg people persistently. Whatever you give in charity is certainly well known to Allah. Moving on to verse number 274. 274, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the lifestyle of charity. You know how in today's society we have the lifestyle of the rich and the powerful, and there are different kind of lifestyles. The lifestyle of monks, the lifestyle of minimal living, the lifestyle of the people on the move. And if you follow TikTokers, there are different kind of TikTokers who talk about people who I know this person. He follows these people who constantly are moving around in those mobile homes. They move from one place to another. So there are different kind of lifestyles that we have in the society that we're living today. There's for young children, they have these lifestyle of those people who are very dark. They wear black, they put on black nail polish. So they're different kind of lifestyles. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they've have always in the history of mankind, there have been different lifestyles. Lifestyles of the rich, the lifestyles of the poor people, the lifestyle of the farmers, the lifestyle of the miners. So different kinds of lifestyles in our lives. In verse number 274, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing a lifestyle of charity. Those people who give charity, what is their lifestyle? How do they live? May Allah make us all of these, inshallah. So, verse number 274. Those who in charity, those who spend their wealth in charity day and night, in secret and in public, have their reward with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Again, la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. If you notice, this half a verse has come at least 3 times in Surah Baqarah, and this verse is repeated twice in this bouquet of ayahs and verses. Twice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you give charity, la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. And what is the life side of charity? Those who spend of their goods by night and by day. Those who spend their wealth in charity day and night, secretly and openly. They're always giving charity. Moving on to verse number 270. Well, we will stop at 274 actually. 275 is the opposite of charity, which is riba, which is a topic for next week, inshallah. So, inshallah, oh, it took most of the time in the review. Inshallah, I will stop here, and I want you to give me your take on these verses. Again, those of you who joined the class later, we are doing a summary of the verses of charity. 261, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us introduction to charity and gives us a parable. 262 is after giving charity, what should be the attitude? Verse 263, what is better than charity? Verse 264, how charity is cancelled. Verse number 265, reasons for giving charity to please Allah, to strengthen soul. Verse 266, Allah tells us this life is temporary. 267, what kind of charity should be given? Verse 268, why we will not give charity because of shaitan. Verse 269, what is wisdom? Verse 270, Allah's guarantee. Verse 271, the power of charity. 272, about the beneficiary, how we should act towards the beneficiary. Verse 273, the group who's most deserving of our charity. Verse 274, the lifestyle of charity. So I'll stop here, inshallah.